Thanks, Niska, for that. Oh my gosh, sorry. I have a bit of a cold, so my nose is a bit runny. Right. Let me stop the transcript and then we start again. I suppose I better show my face. Oh dear gosh. I'm so sorry that you have to be exposed to this twice in one evening. I look at it and I think, what the heck am I doing here? Yeah, I think the reality is that, and and I and I think it comes from the fact that people go down a, a route believing that this is the future, and they keep at it in terms of that route. And I think you get, it's called strategic lock in, and you get locked into the point that you can't leave there. And it becomes a real issue in terms of organizations because they've almost thrown so much um, they've almost thrown so much into this that you actually will uh, carry on trying to put more money into it, or you'll get to the point where you've now realized that it's not worked, and you've got to that sunk cost fallacy point where you now realize that, well, we're not going to stop putting money into this. And it's a real issue for companies. So there are two elements to it. The first element is the idea that I'm going to stop the camera. The first element is the idea that you get strategic lock in. And strategic lock in is where you've invested so much money into something that you can't stop. And then you get to that point that you now start questioning. Well, yeah, you start questioning whether it's worth putting more money into it, and it becomes a real issue for organizations. Um, Liam, do you want to chat about your interpretation of that? It's the idea of throwing good money after bad. Yeah, uh, can I just say that we see that in relationships. Um, we see it in relationships where people invest so much in a relationship and it doesn't work, and it's almost, I've invested so much that I have to stay in this bad relationship, etc., etc. In terms of AI, I think the key thing in terms of AI is that your Gen AI stuff will yeah, I think the bubble's going to burst. There's a strong belief that the bubble will burst, and that um, the future AIs appears to be industry specific. Give me examples. Yeah, no, well, that's exactly. So if you think of, yeah, the Nokia crazy example, the push button phone or the candy bar design phone, they'd put so much money into that that they'd started believing that this is the future, and that there was a clear move towards a touch screen, and they still believed that people would want buttons on a phone. Kyle, explain that a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Guys, give me other examples of companies that have thrown good money after bad. Companies that have thrown good money after bad. How long did it take Edgar's to turn around? Edgar's tried everything and threw more money at it and threw more money at it and threw more money at it until they realized they need to almost adopt a Mr. Price clothing type. Stir-Kinekor is another one. I mean, yeah, we still got a Stir-Kinekor here, and I don't know why we have it. I don't know why we have it, to be honest with you. And Edgar's took multiple years to realize that they need to be more like a Mr. Price clothing store than the kind of executive things they were trying to sell. Oh my gosh, ambulance motorcycles. Musica. One of my students one day said that the reason music has survived, because I couldn't understand why music had survived so long, is because music has sold struggle music. She bought her struggle music from there. And I'm thinking, first of all, you 20, you were not part of the struggle, but that was her reason why music has survived, because they sold struggle music. I didn't want to tell her that there are illegal downloads of struggle music. No. Okay, yeah, no, absolutely, boy. It is good money after bad. That is very impressive, hey? That is very, very impressive. Another example of that, guys, is people who have the wrong study technique. People who have the wrong study technique will put more effort and energy into it and will keep failing, and they'll think, well, maybe more time is required. And you put in a lot of energy into something that won't work. I mean, it applies not just to business, it applies to relationships, it applies to your studies. Who here knows their study technique is wrong, but will do the same thing, thinking if they do more of it, it'll be better? Because that often happens as well. Okay, so guys, let's look at innovation and knowledge. I need to move this away here. So, in terms of innovation and knowledge, I think the reality is that we innovate in order to advance society, advance organizations, to improve people's lives. But I think the reality is we also make sure that we learn from the past, that we create knowledge and we patent that knowledge in order to actually stay ahead of the competition. So, in terms of innovation, I think it's constantly trying to create. But one of the things we see companies do in terms of generating and creating the knowledge that they require is, for example, and Google is a classic example of it. Google bought YouTube because they wanted the knowledge and the embedded bits and pieces in YouTube. They bought Android because they needed that as part of their cloud offering, etc. Oh gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The spending money on a car, crazy. I think the reality is that we now talk about human capital, and what human capital brings is the collective abilities and competencies of people. Knowledge is embedded in organizations, it's embedded in their systems, it's embedded in their processes, and those processes relate to how we innovate. What we do in terms of making sure that we promote dynamic capability. And then remember, tacit and explicit knowledge. Who wants to tell me? Social media trends are now being designed. Explain that, please, Liam, for AI training. Because you've got AI influencers now that make millions and millions, hey? Okay. But I think you guys have seen that there are AI influencers in social media that generate billions and millions. Let me not say billions. That would be Nasipo, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Guys, what is the difference between tacit and explicit knowledge? Where do we find explicit knowledge? Yes, nice, Lebang. Very, very nice. I'm sure that I've shared this one with you already. I always think of MasterChef, and I watched MasterChef for the first time last night in a very, very long time. But I always find it amazing that in MasterChef, you will have two contestants who get the same ingredients and who get the same recipes. And the one would create magic, and the other would create my wife's cooking. And it's that knowing without knowing. It is the experience. It is that understanding. Yeah, I'm going to be in trouble for that one, Niska. I am going to be in trouble for that one. Let me rather, where the one creates magic and the other one creates tragic. And for me, that is that difference. It comes from experience. It comes from doing and learning while doing and embedding it. I think it's a lot more than minus 25%, boy. I think it's a hell of a lot more. Yeah, no, there's a special place in hell for me, Elizna. I'm going to wife hell, I promise you. But I think it's for me, it's the most astonishing thing that two people, same recipe, same ingredients, and you have the vast difference outcome. And we can't explain it other than some person knows without knowing. I think that is the reality. Someone spoke about cars a while ago. In the old days, before were plug and play, where you just plug it in and technology will tell you where the issues are. People used to have mechanics that could listen to a vehicle and that could tune a vehicle, that could do things to a vehicle, and they can't actually tell you in words why they've done it, but it's part of their practice. It's part of what they do. Everyone here has tacit knowledge. Um, I my oldest son cooks way better than I do, but he's asked for some of my recipes. Now my problem is I don't have recipes. I yeah, yeah, that's it. Hey. Yeah, exactly where and how hard. I mean, that's an important bit of tacit knowledge. My son asked me for some of my recipes, and I've just realized I don't cook with recipes. I put ingredients and I put salt and I put other bits in there, spices and herbs in there. And I stop when my ancestors tell me to stop. But how do you write that down? No, no, I don't hope for the best. I'm bloody good cook, actually. I'm a very good cook. And then explicit knowledge are found in textbooks, in companies. You find explicit knowledge in standard operating procedures, in manuals, etc. And it's great to have manuals, but my gosh, that knowing without knowing is something that makes you very, very special. Every single person on this call tonight has explicit knowledge bits that they cannot actually tell others how they do it, but they do it. It's instinctive, it is second nature, it's almost part of your DNA. And let me tell you, really good companies, it's intuition, Jared, 100%, boy. Really good companies are able to take tacit knowledge and turn it into explicit knowledge. It is not a simple process. In the olden days, when apprentices used to train, you used to have journeymen or older artisans that would show you and you would learn from them. It's a damn difficult thing to do. I mean, ask Max Verstappen how write a book on how he drives fast. There's no way you can turn those skills into something that is something someone else can learn and practice. So, why does innovation matter? As we said a bit earlier, we will go through it again. It's about survival, it's about growth, it's about opportunity. I think if we want to see innovation in action, just go to China. Oh my gosh, that is quite disturbing, actually. Yeah, and I mean, you now do these captures for applying for jobs, etc. And I always find that amazing. We worried so much, and I'm stealing a joke here, so the build-up is a little bit, yeah, stolen from somewhere else. But we're so worried about robots taking our jobs, and then you apply for a job and you get a captcha saying, "Please prove that you're a human." I mean, that's disturbing. Yeah, absolutely, Liam. Okay, guys, so in terms of survival, China, look at the innovations that have taken place in China. The fact that China wants to almost become a closed economy, a self sufficient economy. Um, I'm sure that I've shared this with you previously. Oh, gosh, hold on. Um, I think I have shared this with you. Um, Sorry, let me just search properly here. Go away. Sorry. Let's wait. So if you look here, I'm sure I've shared this, and if I have, my apologies. But companies that essentially innovate, and you can see the top players in terms of the number of patents they've registered here in the US, and we can still say US is the biggest economy. I don't know how big that shows your side. Samsung, 10,709. LG Corporation, Qualcomm. I'm not sure who Qualcomm is, and you can see the number of patents registered. In terms of global patent families, though, this is the interesting one. Look at that. Chinese, and here obviously South Korean. But these are the things that create economic success. It pushes the economy forward. And if you look at the growth rates of places like South Korea and like China, it is disturbing. And it's simply just because of the amount of innovation that happens. We also see that it drives economic growth, and it does require dynamic capability. It does require a set of almost skills that constantly question whether what we're doing is what we should be doing, is whether there's a way to improve it. And some companies outsource their innovation. They fund universities, and universities will do the research for them, and they'll benefit from the products. But most companies have people that constantly question on a daily basis whether they should be doing things differently, and then finding ways of reinventing yourself, building those elements into a company that constantly updates and changes what they do. For governments, we've spoken about. I think the key thing here, though, is that without innovation, we wouldn't be here with me sitting in Pietermaritzburg, some of you in Cape Town, some of you in Joburg, some of you in East London, some of you in Port Elizabeth, some of you in Durban, on the same call, listening to the same message. And I think for me, that's what innovation has done. It's created convenience. I love teaching here. Yeah, I still enjoy face to face, but this is my platform. I prefer working here. Right. In terms of innovation bringing change, I think when we look at theme three, so we want to spend a bit of time looking at the innovation strategy framework. One of the things we know about innovation is that it's not arbitrary, that it requires constant thought, that it requires specific actions, that it requires some kind of strategy. And you can't just expect the aha moment without putting in the hard work in terms of making that aha moment happen. And then just you'll see that the elements of that and dynamic capability there. So let's start with innovation. I think the reality is that a lot of these innovations, and we've spoken about this already, are the sort of happened in the garage type innovations. But we cannot underestimate how existing companies advance all the time because employees on a daily basis are trying things. Google puts energy and effort into it. Google has the so called 20% rule, where 20%, and where's my paint? Google has the 20% rule, where 20% of your life at Google, 20% can be devoted. So 1 day out of 5 a week can be devoted on your own projects. Yeah, that's the one and I'll come back to the bookstore in a second, where 20% of your life at work is devoted to creating your own thing, is to building your own new product, your own new app, etc. What is interesting, and you can use Google's time, you can use their staff, you can get a budget for this, etc., etc. The only rule in terms of that 20% time is that you is that Google Google owns the innovation once it's turned into an app, for example. And out of that 20%, 69% of all new Google innovations arise. So essentially, 20% of the time that employees spend at work creates almost 70% of the new innovations. It's the 80-20 rule almost. Remember the Pareto principle. Insofar as bookstores are concerned, how have bookstores reinvented themselves, though? Liam, do bookstores exist in the original format? So exclusive books, way smaller. But our exclusive books, when you go to our exclusive books, they have a little bit of a coffee bar, a little restaurant linked to it, because they've realized that they can't survive trying to compete in terms of the online sellers. So what they do, they give you the opportunity to come and have coffee, to look at books, to have a glance at books, etc. So it's changed the retail setting. That's exactly it, Nosipho. They are selling the human experience. That idea of going with a friend and having coffee and wandering through and going and sitting down and having lunch. But that's exactly it. I mean, why do thrift stores still exist? Talking about 17-year-olds. Why do thrift stores still exist? I think there's an entire generation here from about 16 to about 25 that love thrift stores. They go to thrift stores. They go and find old clothes, etc. They love vintage. How do those things still exist? The lingo. Yeah. But that's brilliant. But are they? It is the experience. I mean, my youngest son's girlfriend absolutely loves thrift stores, and she goes for the bargains. But she goes with her friend, and they will spend hours looking for through things. Yeah. Kyle, I don't know if anyone lives in Pietermaritzburg on this call. I think Amara is one of my students. She's in Pietermaritzburg with me. I don't know who else is in Pietermaritzburg. Our cinema has become incredibly dirty. I don't like our cinema anymore. Um, but that's exactly it. So, yes, there are innovations, and yes, there are advances, and yes, we're driven by technology, but there's still human elements that technology can never replace. Yeah, absolutely, Liam. But to be honest with you, things appear so quickly on on Netflix, on Disney, on Prime, Amazon Prime, on Apple. Those things happen very quickly. That's exactly it. They sell the human experience. No, you can't replicate it at home. I mean, we have a massive TV. It's a huge thing, but you can't replicate it at home. You definitely can't. Okay. So I think there are always going to be anomalies, guys, in terms of the way humans operate, in terms of the way we are wired. And yes, technology is important, but you cannot take away from the way we are wired.